Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Let's do some pod crashing. Episode number 221 is with Joel Stein from the podcast Story of the Week.
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm gonna get it off my chest right away. If you want to hang up afterwards,
Please.
You're more than welcome to.
I
think that you have taken Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story to the next level.
Well, I don't know how I hang up on that. I'd be pretty pleased if I took Paul Harvey's show to the level below. I mean, I'm just starting out at this. Yeah.
Unbelievable. The connection it's like an instant connection because I'm drawn into your stories because you have this amazing ability of knowing where my next thought is going to be. And it's like you're a visionary.
Well, sort of, but also I like talk to someone for 2 hours and we cut it down to a half hour, which is how one appears to be a visionary.
Well, how do you handle those situations? Because I've done that where I've invited people into the studio and they go, there's only like 30 minutes here of me. We talk, I'm not getting that time back. Sorry, man. It's the producer in me that took over.
Yeah, well, there's a producer who actually takes over. So there are producers on this podcast who yell at me, and I'm doing these interviews with these journalists who write these really long, complicated stories. They took 6 months to report. So they've got I asked them to tell me their stories, and they have so much to tell me because they've written these like 15-page stories, and then some of what they wrote got cut. Mm-hmm. So they have these really complicated, interesting stories, and I do it like many podcasters in my closet over Zoom, and so which my wife makes fun of me for in I think homophobic ways. But yeah, so I'm here, and the producer is in the chat part of Zoom telling me to move on and stop asking all these questions. So
God.
We try and keep it moving.
Oh my God, that reminds me so much of when I did television. That IFB, man, my producer back in the studio would say, you're not listening to the conversation. Get it off you and get it on them.
Well, I was worried I was going to be Albert Brooks in broadcast news and not be able to do that because I'm a print journalist. Like what I do is sit for hours with people with a physical notebook and just like wait for interesting things to be said that I can write down. So yeah, I thought I'd just be a sweaty mess as someone tried to talk to me as I talked to someone else. Did you get used to that?
I did. It was only because then all of a sudden I started trusting their direction. And so in the early days of television and stuff like that, I was, everybody, carries their little notebooks around to look official and all that kind of stuff. And so that's when I started listening. And the thing is that's when you start questioning their answers.
When you're listening. But it's the trick, of course, that Albert Brooks couldn't hack and William Hurt could, was to be listening to someone and really listening while someone talks in your ear.
Right.
That's challenging.
Yeah, that's very difficult to do. It really is. Yeah. And the thing about your show, for instance, let's put some focus on the billionaires that are preparing for the final days, building bunkers.
That's our first episode. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was like, it was one of those I knew it moments because you can't help but look at the world today and go, where's everybody going to go? Well, the question is, where are the billionaires going to go? And you provide that for us.
Yeah, we have this guy I've known for a long time. And that's a fun thing. I've been a magazine writer for 20-something years. So I know a bunch of these people who write these much better stories than I do. And one of them is Douglas Rushkoff. And he had written a story and originally for Medium. But it was such a great story because he had been paid a ton of money, more than he'd ever been paid, $40,000 to give a speech. So he flies out to some hotel. And Douglas writes about the internet, and he calls himself a futurist, and he's been doing this for a long time. And he's prepared a speech, and he goes to the green room to get mic'd. And instead, 5 guys walk in, some of whom are billionaires, all of whom are very rich. And they just want to talk to him for an hour. So there's no speech. And the thing they want to talk to him about is where to build their bunker. And they've all like hired Navy SEALs to protect them for something they call the event. And the event for each of them is something different, but it's it could be nuclear war, could be massive climate change, could be the robots taking over, but they're all waiting for some end of the world event. And they've built these very, beautiful, luxury bunkers, which is so crazy.
Wow. You're so perfect for podcasting in the way that when you do the research on the creation of podcasts, it was because of writers that brought it forward. They just wanted to get their voices and their stories heard. And so when you say that you came from print, I'm going, of course you're in a podcast. Of course you are. You are the true roots of what we're doing.
It is. I still love writing so much, but I will say it's a lot easier to get people to listen to a podcast. I was at the Hollywood Bowl last night, and someone I knew saw me and yelled, "I love your new podcast." At which point I said, "You could be talking to anyone at the Hollywood Bowl right now. I don't know if you mean me." At which point he yelled to the whole bowl, "Hey everybody, I love your new podcast." But yeah, I don't think anyone's yelled to me in public that they loved my article in quite a while. Yeah. So the lift is a lot lower to get someone to listen to a podcast.
I love the jingle. Who does that? Is that you?
No, I have no musical talent, but I know this guy Jonathan Colton, who writes really funny, smart songs like Code Monkey that you may have heard. And I told him to write. It's a really simple idea for a show, which is we find a story in a magazine that's really long and complicated, and we get the person to come on the show and tell us their story. That's a somewhat difficult thing to explain. So I asked Jonathan, can you do what Sherwood Schwartz did, for the guy who created and wrote the theme songs for Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch? He did such a great job of explaining the premise in the song that by the time you got to the show, you didn't have to figure anything out. So I asked him to do that with the theme song, and he just nailed it.
What are you going to do when people say that they get their news from you? And I mean that as a compliment, because like the Daily Show and stuff like that. People tune into the Daily Show to get their news. And with the way that you deliver this news, dude, this is very, very addictive to listen to it.
Well, I want to tell them it's not news. Like, we're purposely not picking anything that has to do with the doom scrolling you do on your phone.
Right.
So there's nothing that these are stories you're not finding on CNN or, the New York Times, wherever you get your news. This is not a front page story. This is a weird story.
Yep.
This is a complicated story. This is a story with turns and twists you don't expect. It's like a story. It's not a piece of news that makes you angry. It's a piece of human life that makes you empathetic towards other people, because you realize how crazy and unexpected and weird the world is. So yeah, you'll get the kind of news. Our goal is you're going to get a story that you're going to need to tell the next 3 people you run into.
I mean,
but you're not going to get a story that's just going to make you, angry at somebody.
Well, you're going to laugh as well. So it's almost like infotainment then, because we were listening to the story with Allison, who spent 10 years on Tinder. I mean, how did you go into this conversation without, to keep away from the creepiness that it's like, because sometimes when you sit down with people with Tinder, you want to ask every dang question.
I asked every dang question. and I purposely asked for a young female. Now I'm sounding creepier. I purposely asked for a producer who was young and female, so she could tell me when I get creepy. Okay. And she did. And so she was, like you said, when you had that piece in your ear, she was telling me to back off. And more importantly, I talked to someone for an hour and a half, 2 hours. We cut it down to a half hour. So there was plenty of me being creepy that was cut.
What is your theory behind the half hour? Because when I go into and I see a show that's like 60 minutes or 90 minutes or a Joe Rogan 5 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I can't take all of that in. So how did you settle in on 30 minutes?
I kind of like those shows, those like Dax Shepard's or Sam Harris, where they really get into it with someone. And that's what I pitched to this company, podcast Pushkin, that Malcolm Gladwell owns. And so they're the ones who kind of set me straight. And they said, no one wants to do that. No listener wants to spend that much time with you. Maybe with Joe Rogan, but not you.
Yeah, because
so they cut me to a half hour.
Yeah, because everything that I've ever learned, it's like, each town, no matter how big the town is, you're only 20 minutes away from something. And it's like, okay, that's what we have to do. We have to figure out how we're going to take that 20 minutes and put sound in it.
I wish they had said it to me that way. That's really smart. That's your average commute, right? It's it's about 20?
About 20 minutes, yep.
Oh, well, yeah, so we're not doing a great job. We come in close to 30.
Yeah, but you keep us in the car, though. Dude, I sat there in the car, and when you were talking about toad poisons and stuff like that, I wasn't going to leave because I kept looking at the counter going, oh, my God, there's only 3 more minutes left. You can do this. You can do this.
That's the highest compliment I've gotten so far on this podcast. That's amazing. And yeah, it's probably due to the doctor who administers toad poison for people to smoke in Mexico and all over the world. He travels all over the world. He's the high priestess of smoking toad, and a couple people have died in his care. But that guy, that story, that's from the New Yorker. I thought that was an amazing story. I hope it didn't, your doctor's appointment wasn't canceled, but I'm glad you stayed in the car. I appreciate that.
I'm a time freak. I get places. I always believe that 3 hours early is 6 hours too late.
Oh my God. You know what changed me? In the first book I wrote, I did 3 days of boot camp in the Army, and my captain said to all of us, you're never on time. There's no such thing. You're either early or late, and you never want to be late. And it just stuck with me that and now even Zooms. I Zoomed an interview with George Clooney during the pandemic, and I logged on 5 minutes early, and he was already there.
Yep. I love that stuff. I notice that a lot about the rock stars too, because it's not that they want to hurry up and get the interview over. They just want to make sure that they're on time and we're going to have a good vibe.
It's amazing how professional successful people are, even rock stars.
Yeah. It's such a business. But the one thing, and I don't know if you're starting to feel this as well, since the pandemic, do you notice that everybody is more grateful for having an opportunity?
That's a good question. Have you noticed that?
I have. The people that would not have talked before are saying, yeah, let's do it. I'm going, really? Are you sure? I mean, wow. How's this going to happen?
Are they just desperate for human interaction, or do you think they're more grateful?
No, I feel it. Because when I go into a conversation, we're breaking down lyrics and stuff like that especially with these new bands, and maybe it's the teaching of the group Tesla, because Tesla has really adopted this idea of we're going to go out there into the real world, grab these musicians, and we're going to train them because nobody is doing it. And I just love the members of Tesla for doing that.
I had no idea that's what Tesla did.
Yeah, and they take them into the studio. They teach them about the marketing, because that's how I get a hold of them, is because they're going to be interviewed. It's not going to be a groupie or anybody like that asking the questions. It's going to be somebody who takes it very seriously.
I love looking into lyrics.
Oh my God!
Like Song Exploder.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't, because I grew up at a time in which you had. If you were lucky, the album came with lyrics, but didn't always. And it was often, and you're a teenager, and so you don't even know much about the world and these references. I was sitting next to someone, I saw The Who last night at the Hollywood Bowl. I was sitting, and there were a surprising amount of young people there. Mm-hmm. And the guy next to me was rocking out really hard, and he was acting out a lot of the Who songs. But they were singing "You Better You Bet," and they got to the part about listening to, the sound of old T-Rex, and he impersonated a dinosaur. And I was like, "Oh right, why would this guy know who T-Rex is?" Yeah, but I love, ever since Rap Genius or Lyric Genius or whatever it's called now, it's so, which isn't as good as I want it to be, but it's still at least a peek into what these songs mean. It's so. I'm fascinated.
You're right about the younger generation adopting the older music, because last night Fathom Events did a Grateful Dead concert, 90 minutes of the concert, and the majority of the people, 2 sold-out theaters, 2 of them were young people.
Wait, I don't understand. Who was playing?
Fathom Events. It was the Grateful Dead. They played an old concert that went 90 minutes.
Well, I don't know what Fathom Events is.
What it is you go to AMC or you go to a Regal Theater, and they all have all of these events. You can go and you can see
like they do with opera.
Well, yeah, exactly. And they're doing it with concerts now, and it's such a moment to experience.
What is I'm old enough where I used to see the Grateful Dead at the Shoreline Amphitheater. What is a Grateful Dead concert on a movie screen like? That sounds like the opposite of what a Grateful Dead concert is like.
But the thing is, though, I've even done it with Kanye West, and you're sitting there going, I have to watch Kanye West up on the IMAX screen. You get so involved and so into it that you're dancing, you're singing. People don't sit in their seats; they get up and dance.
That's amazing. Yeah, I guess that works. Kanye makes more sense to me than the Dead, because the Dead concert was like only 10% about seeing the Dead. Like, it was all about the experience. But I kind of want to go do that now and check it out.
Yeah, and they came dressed, dude. I mean, it was like
What?
Yes. Oh my God.
Like cosplay dressed, like dressed as if they were in the 70s.
Oh yes. And it was like walking into you know what the Volkswagen City looks like. Did you ever go to one of those where the whole entire community comes together before the show and they're living there in their tents and everything?
Oh, and the veggie hot dogs. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it kind of reminded me of that. It was like a big gathering.
Wow. And this was where were you? Where was that?
I was at Regal Stonecrest. And so, but Regal as well as AMC, they'll do these Fathom event concerts. And I mean, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi. In fact, I'll never forget the one that I did with the Jonas Brothers. And the Jonas Brothers were actually there. They came into the theater with me.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that seems like a waste. Why not just the Jonas Brothers are there? Why not just listen to the Jonas Brothers? I don't know. I'm worried about our culture. This doesn't seem right.
So back to the podcast story of the week. When do you know that you've bumped into the next episode?
Well, I'm working for this Malcolm Gladwell's company, so it's very bureaucratic. We have lots of meetings and lots of emails where we discuss why a story may or may not work. We have a spreadsheet, which I'm not made for spreadsheets, but we have we discuss like pros and cons of each of these stories, and I'm looking for something that is very complicated and has twists that surprise you. It doesn't just go where you think it's going to go. Not a big fan of murder because I wind up making jokes with the person, so I don't want to do it something too dark. But some of these stories are a little more dark. Like we have one coming out. Oh, the one coming out tomorrow, I liked a lot. And do you know what LARPing is?
No.
Live action role playing. It's normally when like instead of playing Dungeons and Dragons, you get too into it and you get a foam sword and you go out in the woods dressed like an elf and you beat up some wizard. So that became popular like 20 years ago. Popular is not fair. It became done about 20 years ago. And it turns out in Scandinavian countries, they LARP, and it's become incredibly popular there. And there's like a LARP-themed high school. It's like a big thing in the community, but they LARP incredibly dark things. Like they'll LARP the AIDS crisis in the 80s, or being in a bunker after a nuclear war if the Cuban Missile Crisis had gone badly. So this guy is in Denmark, American guy visiting, and he does a LARP, and it's fake gay conversion therapy.
Wow.
And he's gay, but he thinks it's going to be kind of interesting and fun, and instead he gets kind of wrapped up in it, and he gets really emotional, and he kind of hates himself because he's getting wrapped up emotionally in this thing, which is a little inherently silly. And it's a pretty crazy story.
Man, it reminds me of this new flick that I've been watching, or this new binge watch, and it's called Midnight Club. And what they do is the goal is to tell a scary story, and the characters act it out. So that's got to be why this LARPing. That's got to be the next big thing.
Oh, so this is a reality show?
It's definitely scripted. But what happens is that it's a midnight club, and so they're all people that are dying. That's the darkness part of it. But they all meet in this room to have a drink, and then someone has to sit at the front of the table and tell a story, share a story. But it has to be a dark, deep, scary story. And the people that are playing the roles are those that are sitting in the room. They're playing it out.
Oh, that's a fun idea. Yeah, it's very similar. But that's the kind of story. That's the kind of what we're doing. Is we're sitting around and having someone tell a story.
Yeah.
The original idea for the podcast was when I first got to New York, I'd go to these obnoxious parties, and someone would walk up to me, and they would say, "Did you read this story in the New Yorker?" And I would say yes, even though I hadn't. and then they would tell me the whole story, even though I just told them I read it. And so instead of having the boring guy at the party tell you this incredible story, we are having the person that wrote the story and spent months reporting this come and tell us the story. And then I'm hoping that you then go to some party and bore people with your retelling of it.
I love it. That's it. The continuation. That's a Dolly Partonism. That's the way that they did country music up there in the Appalachians.
Wait, what?
Dolly Parton. She told me that the way that the reason what they did things in music in the Appalachians was because if Johnny died over here at this farm, it had to get over to this city, and so they did it in music. That's how they spread their
That's how
news.
every culture did. I mean, that's the Odyssey was told, over a lute over the campfire until, it was eventually written down. But yeah, most oral traditions are people sitting around singing stories because that's the only way you can remember it. If it rhymes and has, music, you remember songs.
Yep.
Like that's the way to tell a story.
Yeah, because
that's why we have a theme song.
Even in the new movie Banshee, which is from Colin Farrell, there's a woman in there that makes you just laugh every time you come into her store. What's the news? What's the news? What's the news? And it's like, and that's what I got to tell you, that I thought of your podcast, because now when I tune into it on iHeart, I really do. What's the news? And I know it's not a news story, but it's still news to me. It's content.
Yeah, it's a story. It's a story you want to tell people.
Yeah.
I mean, if we did our job right, you as soon as you finish it, you have to tell someone you heard this crazy story.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, Joel, I could talk to you all dang day. You got to come back so we can do more of this.
Yeah, I want to talk about song lyrics with you.
Yeah. Oh, I'll do it. We get some of these musicians and break them down, dude.
I love that so much.
Well, you be brilliant
all right,
today.
If you read a crazy story.
What's that?
If you read a crazy story, email me.
I'll do it.
If you're reading something that you think makes a story of the week, let me know.
I'll do it. You be brilliant today, okay, sir?
You too. Thank you so much.